Hello, can people hear me? Can anyone hear me? Sorry, I guess there was a problem. Okay, I'm sorry about that. All right. Okay, we'll start over then. So sorry. Um, so hello and welcome to the 2020 Southeast Collaborative Online Conference. My name is Lauren Classy. I'll be your host for this session, and today we are honored to have with us Melanie Borski-Howard and her colleague, Carolyn Valencia. Melanie has studied music and theater and received her master's in English from Utah State University. She's currently a Youth Services Librarian at Boulder Public Library in Boulder, Colorado. She has 18 plus years of storytime experience and is currently in her second season of the local televised program, Read With Us. Carolyn is an outreach specialist who specializes in early literacy. Carolyn shares her passion for the arts and multiliteracies, primarily physical and self-literacy, with her diverse community members in Greeley, Colorado, and is currently working on outcome-based measurements for early literacy outreach service. This event is supported through funding from the Library Services and Technology Act through the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Before we get started, I have a few things that I'd like to share with you. This session will be recorded and archived, and a link will be sent out next week with access to the archived session. If there are other people watching this webinar with you, we would love to hear about it so that we can have an accurate head count for our records. So please send us, the host of this conference, or just if you're calling in from a state that is hosting this, you can contact that person and just let us know how many people are watching with you. You'll have an opportunity at the end of the presentation to submit questions, and so you can type those in the chat area. You might also have a Q&A box on the screen, but we'd like for you to use the chat so that people will all be able to see that at the same time and not have to check two different boxes. And make sure when you're typing questions into the chat box that you select all participants to send to, unless you have a specific, let's say a technology question that you are, that you need one of us to address. But if you do it to all participants, that way everyone can see it, the presenters as well as the host can see it. You will receive CEUs for this session and other sessions included in the Southeast Collaborative Conference. So look for a survey link in your inbox on Friday. And now I will turn things over to Melanie. Thanks so much for being with us today.
We're so excited. We just got back from PLA. We had a ball at PLA and I presented part of this there. So my name is Melanie Borski-Howard. I am she, her, hers. And this is a presentation that we did, both of us did at the California or Colorado Association of Libraries. So we're super excited to, we've added to it. We've made it bigger and better, and it should be really, really exciting. But we're covering a lot, but we totally want, please, any questions that you have, please. Oh, I should let you introduce yourself.
So like she said, we're really excited to be presenting this to you. My name is Carolyn Valencia. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And like Melanie was saying, we're going to cover a lot of information. So please do send as soon as they come up, and then we're going to leave about hopefully 10 minutes at the end for us to go through and answer some of the questions. So we can get started.
Yeah, right? We're totally going to get started because we have a lot to cover. So this is basically our agenda. We're just going to be the main, the first good part of the webinar. We're going to talk about why this is important. And boy, there's a lot we can talk about why this is important. So that's going to be a big part. Then we're actually going to get into the Rainbow Storytime
series that High Plains Library District did.
Yep.
And then we're going to share a little bit from High Plains' perspective and our experience. And then you're going to share with the group about Boulder's experience.
Yeah, so we're going to go back and forth. Boulder's very progressive. It's been easy for us. High Plains had a little bit different.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a different take. So
yeah, so it's fun for us to present together because
we can show you the broadness of how certain libraries will have a very progressive community, whereas other ones, it's going to take a bit of time to get to maybe a bigger program like a drag queen story hour.
Right. So, okay, we're going to get into the heart of why we're librarians. And Carolyn's going to speak to one of my favorite things from ALA, the Library Bill of Rights.
So why do we do inclusive programming? Well, the American Library Association has created a great Library Bill of Rights. And so ALA, through its actions and those of its members, is instrumental in creating a more equitable, diverse, and inclusive society. This includes a commitment to combating marginalization and underrepresentation within the communities that we serve. So also as professionals, we believe that it's really important for us to educate ourselves so that we really understand the effects of historical exclusion. That way we're really embodying that when we're presenting these programs that are diverse and inclusive.
Absolutely. And like I was saying, in my introduction, I've been doing story times for 18 years. I've done a lot of story times, and I've written a book on story times that I'll talk about at the end. So I've written a book on story times, I've done them, but I tell you, studying and really making your story times bigger and better by adding inclusion, I have learned so much. And my story times have become so much better. And we'll talk about that too. I've made mistakes, but holy cow, I love this part of me educating our youth and representing our youth. So I love, we follow the competencies for librarians. This is specific to serving children, so we, and I love this part in here where it says, so exactly what Carolyn was just speaking to at the Library Bill of Rights, that passion energizes members, that's us, to be innovators in the field of children's library services. That is us, okay? Particularly in the areas of access, advocacy, outreach, inclusion, and diversity. So here is your key to getting to be able to do these programs and these books. And I've added this in here for selecting books, Teaching for Change. I have this at the end. So many fabulous websites that are going to help you be able to find books, help you be able to present this material and learn more. So we're going to go into a little bit more. There's the ALA background. Oh, whoops. I think I just went to present mode. It's not letting me move forward. Hold on. Oh, my screen's frozen up. Let me see. Oh, wait, here we go.
Okay, great.
All right, here we go.
So
sorry about that, guys.
So, obviously the two of us, we believe libraries are for everyone. And, as neutral as we want to provide this information to you about what the programs were, how we did them, we do want to tell you that we both feel like we are advocates for our marginalized community members. So libraries are for everyone. There should be policies in place at your library that support professionals and paraprofessionals that support us in doing these types of programs, because those policies are going to act as our armor. We also want to make sure that these policies represent our strategic plan. But again, though these policies are our armor for if and when these programs are challenged.
Right, and we get this question a lot when we present this. People are like, how do I get my board? How do I get on, how do I get everybody on board? How do I get our admin on board if they're not already? And this is exactly what it's about. I cannot get it to move forward again.
What did you do it last time?
Yeah.
Sorry, Mercury retrograde. Things are.
Lauren, did you do anything to help it move forward? I'm not getting my slides to move forward. Oh, you guys, I'm sorry. There's so much we want to talk about. Hold on. Let's go to slide 6.
Oh, there we go. Okay, great. So, so a little bit about how High Plains, there was 2 of us, and how we approach this is we we invested in trainings, personal or professional development trainings, and these were the three big takeaways. So we want to advocate. We want to advocate for programs that are diverse and inclusive. We want to normalize this, and we also want to provide a lot of entry points for community dialogue. So this is super important. And with that community dialogue, this is a great way for us to model civil discourse, which I think our world really is in need of right now.
Right, and even just the children to hear it and talk about it. I love when we do see the questions we get from children, just getting them talking about it.
And so lastly, I guess I want to say too, diversity doesn't just include multicultural diversity. We need a space that is affirming of gender and sexual diversity in libraries. So really important, before you begin any type of programming, you have to engage in some critical self-reflection.
Yeah, this is hard.
It is really hard. So you need to know yourself. Are you an ally? Why not? If you choose to advocate for, let's say, your LGBT plus community, how will you do that? Will you do it as a professional, or will you do it personally? So it's critical that you know your community. So you want to survey them so you understand exactly what kind of program they want. And then through those surveys and through just kind of opening up more conversation, you're creating that conversation or that opportunity within your greater community.
Because that's what you guys did, right?
Yeah, and,
right.
We'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about our Rainbow Diversity series. When you gather all this information, you want to share it with your staff. And this, again, is really, it is not the easiest conversations to have. For example, we attended a great training, and then we shared it with our outreach department, and we engaged in some really critical yet challenging conversations where half our staff wasn't even certain about pronouns or gender identity, and one staff member was not comfortable at all with pronouns. So it opened up an opportunity for us to get to know each other and to express vulnerabilities, but it wasn't easy by any means. And then lastly, Melanie and I both can talk about this. How do biases show up in our language and expectations? So for example, my personal experience here is I attended a training called A Queer Endeavor in Greeley, Colorado, fall 2019. And I was there so happy, thinking I'm here fighting the good fight. I'm learning all I can learn.
And librarians.
And I had to use the restroom. I had to powder my nose. So I got up, went to the bathroom, and there I stood for 5 minutes because it was a gender neutral bathroom. And I just didn't know what to do, where to go. And then I had to reflect on that. Why was I so challenged? Why was I so uncomfortable? So just to be a little vulnerable with you and share with you some of my challenges.
Right, and I think for me, it's the raising race consciousness, which I've really been interested in doing. I mean, drag queen was easy for Boulder. We had hardly any problems, which I'll talk about. But raising race consciousness, we are primarily white in Boulder, and talking about race and story time has been really important to me, but also a lot of the feedback, what I had to do is go back and really understand my white privilege. And that's a lot of studying, and it's a lot of hard studying. And, I get asked, how dare you do race consciousness and story time because you're white? But hey, look at librarianship. We're 95% white. It's going to be up to us. And I make mistakes. We apologize for those mistakes and move on, and we learn and we pass that along to the children and to especially the caregivers that we are talking to.
So as you do this, like Melanie said, you are practicing mindfulness. You are saying to yourself, okay, this happened, yet I'm not going to judge it. I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to apologize for it if I need to, and then I'm going to keep going.
Right.
So here is, so our journey
So we've talked a lot about, I hope you've understood why we do this. I feel like we've talked a lot. Remember that library bill of rights. You know, that's as librarians, that's what we do. Now we're going to move forward and we're going to talk about how to do it, how we've implemented and steps that you can take to do it.
So I have to say that I'm thrilled to be here, but I am largely presenting my colleague Amy Ortiz's research and efforts and program. And I should give you a disclaimer. She is an outreach librarian with me. She is also my younger sister. So if you see that picture of us on the far right, you're going to say,
and
well,
she is a pistol. Like we presented at when we presented at Cal. Yes, she was, and Clell. When we presented at Clell, we had someone in the audience that was not so nice, and boy, it was really fun to
see how
to present with you guys.
Yeah,
well, you too.
You.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so in the bottom left corner, that is my daughter, and she. I took that picture of her at Clearview Library's Drag Queen Story Hour. It was a great story time. We were so happy to be there. High Plains Library District is a unique district. We cover 4,000 square feet. In Northern Colorado, we have 7 branch libraries and 6 member libraries, autonomous member libraries. So as we began our journey towards inclusion, we understood that we had several hurdles to jump through or jump over. Not only were we cisgender heterosexual females in our 40s that really didn't understand the terms or we just had to invest in professional development, but we also had to consider how large our district was. And, you know, we needed to survey our community and make sure that we understood their needs, but we also had to educate our staff because when challenges arise, chances are they're going to go to the frontline staff. And we wanted everyone to have talking points and at least understand what we were doing. And we had to have these programs fall in line with our new strategic plan. So those things were very important for us. That's it. So this is Amy Ortiz's baby. We surveyed, Amy Ortiz, an outreach librarian, created a partnership with PFLAG. Now PFLAG used to be an acronym, but now it is no longer an acronym. But it basically stands for, it's basically the United States' first and largest organization uniting parents, families, and allies with people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer. So the acronym, for those people that love acronyms out there, it did stand for Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. And then it was later broadened to Parents, Families, and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. So Amy created this partnership, surveyed PFLAG's community and said, do you want a drag queen story hour, or do you want a rainbow story time? And PFLAG, because of our community, embraced the rainbow story time. So Amy created a 2-month series that started in September of 2019 and happened every other Saturday at a church. That was the best space that we could find it. As outreach librarians, we want to do programs that are not in the brick and mortar library, but out in our community. So we started with diverse families. We went then to children with developmental disabilities. Gender identity was a big one. And then we ended with let's talk about race.
Yeah. So I just wanted to check in and make sure that I feel like, because I haven't heard from Lauren, I just wanted to make sure everything is still going okay. I feel like because we haven't heard from Lauren and I can't see anything, that everything's going okay.
Everything is good. We have not yet gotten any questions. So we are good.
Okay. And we haven't gotten one question?
Not yet, no. I think they may just be listening and waiting till the end.
Okay. Okay. I've never done a webinar when I haven't seen people reacting, and then I thought to myself, oh my God, are we on? So I'm very glad that we're on. Thank you, Lauren. Okay, so moving forward with Rainbow Story Hour. So the first one we're going to tackle now, what we're going to tackle is all these in Rainbow Story Hour, but I would like to say, as a storyteller, this is something, especially for Boulder, we have not run into the problems High Plains is. I have an admin that really supports diversity and inclusion. It's very, very important to us. And these 4 story times are things that we should be incorporating into all of our story times. It's very, very important. And I love this quote from the Human Rights Campaign, that it is very important that we show children the world out there, that is what we do. We need to show a wide variety of families. And I must admit, kids love it. Families is great. So it's very, very important that we present. I mean, not only I love how High Plains did their own story times around all of these, and we could literally give you sessions on all of these an hour long, because they're so fun to find books at, and to find the books that do it wrong and find the books that do it right. But again, so my perspective is these should be in all your story times. Carolyn's going to talk to how she did them specifically.
So I'm going to share with you a little bit of Amy's planner. So Amy started out with all are welcome here, and she made sure that her attendees understood that this was a safe space to read, sing, talk, and play together.
I love that.
So that's really, really important. And even though Amy could have focused on adoptive families or biracial families, she really highlighted the LGBT plus families. So it's story time. You sing, you welcome everyone into the group, and she started with families, but she did a lot of dialogic reading with open-ended questions, and that was vital. That was really important. So here are a few of her questions. What are some ways that we are alike and different? Not every family looks the same. How do our differences help make the world a more interesting and better place?
Oh, that's great.
So we got a lot of positivity there. Everyone is born with their unique characteristics. People are born and grow in all shapes and sizes. And then having conversations about differences help all of us to understand that diversity is what makes our world so special. So maybe not so much a question there, but reiterating that it is okay to be yourself and it's okay to be different. Second book she read was My Family, My Two Moms. So again, she had her questions. Then she did an action-based song, a parachute play, and a craft. And the crafts are really important because that gave her that community dialogue time where they sat down, parents drawing too, and everybody got to talk about where they were in their world.
Right. And I love doing diverse books like this and having the kids come up afterwards, like a mixed race, like Hello Lulu, and having the child come up at the end saying, that's my family. Like you are to show, like it gives me chills. When they recognize themselves, it's so important. So diverse families, that can be really easy. You can take it from all standpoints, but a really, really good thing to have in your story time. Wait, move up or down? Oh, I'm so illiterate.
There you go.
Okay.
So the next thing that High Plains showcased was children with developmental disabilities. So again, Amy welcomed her group there. She said that this is a safe space to read, sing, talk, and play. Talked about physical disabilities. Now, you can also have an opportunity to talk about intellectual disabilities, right? And so she sang. Her first book was Frank the Seven-Legged Spider. She asked questions, how do you think Frank feels about not having 8 legs? Is Frank still a spider? Yes, he still crawls and makes webs. He's still the same as the other spiders, he just has 1 less leg. So the second book she read was Not So Different. And that she said was a great book because it was a nonfiction. So
yeah, that's really good to put in your nonfiction. And I've incorporated Susan Laughs for a long time. I think it's out of print, but I just love it because it's just Susan and you don't even know. I mean, like just like she's pictured there, and it's like Susan laughs, Susan cries, Susan runs, or Susan runs, and it shows her on her daddy's feet running, and then it shows her eating, and it shows her not liking the food and liking the food, and then at the end it has a picture of her in a wheelchair, and it says that is Susan through and through, just like me, just like you, and it's beautiful. So these are the scripts that we've used for our story times, or specifically for developmentally, right?
Well, this is High Plains Outreach Storytime Planner, and I have to give a shout out to Katie Schreier. She does story, songs, and stretches. And I did that online training with Katie. Basically, anybody who wants to learn more about incorporating yoga-inspired movements and mindfulness into their story times, Katie Schreier is the person that you want to connect with in library world. She's excellent. Great. Story, song, and stretches. So I developed this planner off of a planner that she had us use. We wanted to make sure that we added in moments for mindfulness. So Kira Wiley has great CDs.
Yeah, for scarves and stuff like that.
And just for breathing exercises. We also think it's important for us to think about physical literacy, early literacy, and social emotional learning. So that is just an example of one of our planners.
So here's our planner. So we actually designed a sensory friendly story time. We had the community came to us. We do a sensory friendly concert. So we have a beautiful auditorium at the Boulder Public Library, and they did a concert where it was specific to sensory kids, and the kids could come up afterwards and play the instruments and everything. And we had them ask us to do a sensory specific story time. So we did a lot of research, and we created this script. We did 4 sensory storytime scripts, put them online so the kids knew what they were going to do ahead of time. And we tried to do a sensory friendly story time. And unfortunately, it was not that well attended. And what we found was our community wanted those sensory kids to be able to come to any story time. So what we found is it wasn't just a matter, and we keep these scripts and we'll do sensory story times when needed, but it's training your staff to know those cues when you have sensory kids in your audience, to know to dim the lights if it's too overwhelming, or to know to lower your voice, or to know what cues you need to do to make your story time more accessible for them.
And some libraries have even sensory like kits that they will bring out and offer to a child if they need just something to touch. Yeah, and these aren't very loud manipulatives. They're able to play with them without really disrupting or creating a lot of noise that might disrupt the story times.
Yeah, and I'm sure you guys are very, very familiar with all of these techniques. So just to say that this is a part of diversity that we don't think about, is us being trained to present it. To present the story. Yeah. Okay. So now we'll go to gender identity.
And this one's a big one. And I'll be honest with you, when I spoke with Amy about the Rainbow series, she said this was the one that she was most nervous for. And so I think she did a lot of research.
Well, because originally you wanted it to be a drag queen story hour.
But,
and people were like, no, we weren't ready to go there.
Not even that, we just weren't ready to go there as a district and also as a community. Even though me and Amy wanted to show up and support the other Colorado libraries that were doing drag queen story hour. I have a joke that I wanted to ride in on a white horse and just save my colleagues that were really just under the gun. They were just really getting a lot of negative feedback, but we weren't there. And so we again did the Rainbow Storytime series, which is a great way for us to support our marginalized community members. So Amy created this, and the first book she read was Not Every Princess by Jeffrey and Lisa Boone. I'm terrible with last names. Amy asked the questions: can boys love pink and play with dolls? Can girls be astronauts and football players? How do our differences help make the world a more interesting and better place? So second book she read was Julian is a Mermaid. I love that book.
It's such a great book.
The pictures in the book are gorgeous.
Grandma is my favorite.
Now here is a really neat story. So Amy had told me that we didn't have a lot of people show. We had maybe 10 people show up for each story time, but after the series was over, some attendees, a mother and her 2 children, went to one of our branch libraries and just gave so much positive feedback. And this is a great story. The mother had 2 sons. They were born boys. I am going to refer to one of her sons as Andrew because I don't know this young child's pronouns. So Andrew came to her gender identity story time in a purple dress and purple shoes. And Andrew was so excited to be himself. And so the mother came to the library and said, we want to see more of this, but we want to see it expand. So she gave the great ideas of having a series on incarcerated parents, Indigenous families.
Oh, wow.
Mental health.
Yeah.
Within families.
Talk about expanding.
And learning disabilities. So that created even more dialogue within our library. And we really saw that there was a need. For this gender identity story time to be successful, you have to create that space where you are safe. Everyone is safe to be themselves. Right. You want to listen to what they're saying about who they are and how they feel when they get to express themselves. And then you want to appreciate them for being vulnerable and for being unabashedly who they are. And then maybe you want to add to that space by being vulnerable and sharing some of your experiences.
Right, that's a perfect segue into it. Talk about being unabashedly of who you are. So here is my baby, which is the Drag Queen Story Hour, which we are in our 4th year of doing and has blown my socks off as a storyteller. Holy cow. Like really, and I do an entire workshop on this. And I just have loved where this is taking me on the road. This was the first thing I experienced with really dealing with diversity and inclusion. I can add lots of books to my library, but doing something specific and something big and the questions I get and the challenges that I've had, it has made me such a better librarian. I'm such the better person for doing Drag Queen Story Hour. So we started it in 2017. I was now I was lucky because our administration came to us and said that they wanted to do it. So they pushed it to our staff and said, who wants to do this? And I was like, I definitely want to do this. I have a theater background, so I was able to contact some of the people in Denver that have done the Drag Queen Story Hour, and I was connected with 2 fabulous queens. And I'm going to tell you, if you do a Drag Queen Story Hour, that is key, is the fabulous queens, and I'll talk about that. So our first story time we just did in our regular story space, and you can see these pictures. We doubled our numbers the first story time, and I was blown away. Our numbers just went absolutely through the roof, and it just continued. So we did it the next year, doubles numbered. The pictures below, we had to move into our auditorium with Shirley Delta Blow. Shirley Delta Blow is fabulous, and she's actually a 3rd grade teacher. So again, picking that good queen. You guys, don't be scared. We'll support you in doing it.
And I think when you say good queen, you're talking about a professional performer,
right,
somebody
right.
who does this for a living and understands when there is an audience of families,
right,
they cater their show to families.
And they do, of course they do. And you know why they do it too is, so here is, like I was saying, the setting it up. So we were lucky because we got the okay from our administration, and there's that higher grade queen. So like Carolyn was saying, everything you need to know about a Drag Queen Story Hour, I'm pointing to the screen. Look, you can see me pointing, is this dragqueenstoryhour.org. So this Drag Queen Story Hour started in 2016. Since it has become so popular and gotten so much backlash, they have set up a organization that helps support people to do Drag Queen Story Hour. And they don't just do it lightheartedly. They are serious. They want to back you up. They want to help you. So to hire a great queen, you're going to contact the person that's your Drag Queen Story Hour rep. And then also you need to, they will give you book lists. They will give you, oh God, what's the song that they do? The heels on the drag queen, go higher and higher. Yeah, they'll give you great songs. So if the drag queen that you've chosen isn't necessarily a storyteller, you can give them the tools to become a better story hour. Story person, because we are lucky, and both of our queens had done story times before, and of course, and Shirley Delta Blow with the purple wig, she is a 3rd grade teacher, so it was great. She had kids come up to see her story time. from Denver. She had people all over. The one in the auditorium, we were at max. Like, I just can't believe how successful they are, you know. But also, you want to be really, really smart. And again, you want to be completely transparent when you're presenting a drag queen story hour. You want to work with your PR person, your admin, to get them on board. And you'll have drawbacks. You may have some issues. But I tell you, when we presented this at PLA in Nashville, I loved that a lot of people were so concerned because they're just like, well, what if something bad happens, or what if something gets challenged? And we had an ALA rep stand up. Carolyn and I were both there, stand up at the presentation. And the ALA rep said, we will help you. If you have any pushback, we will help you. You guys, this is not just a trend. It's just so fun to be able to do it. And I have to just do one more story. Do you want to talk?
Well, I just want to say, from my standpoint, it's those policies. You have to have
we forgot to talk about that.
The policies in place, because that literally is your armor. That is what protects you, and you've got an administration, and your admin is there to protect you, and hopefully your library board is also on board and affirming the work that you're doing. Those three things are huge.
Yeah, it really, really is. Like I say, we've got your back. If you want to do this, contact me. And I'm the rep for drag queens, so please contact me. But there are lots of other ways, like we show, that you can make a difference in your story times. This is just a program too. Remember, this is just a program. So
we sing to them,
right?
We read to them,
but also it's a program that's not your story time. So you can say, if anyone's like, I can't believe you do it, we're like, well, you know, we did a Santa story time, but that was a special program. This is a special program. So one of my favorite stories, though, that I'll end with this, because I could go on and on, is I love when Shirley Delta Blow reads Morris Micklethwaite's in his tangerine dress, and the story about the little boy who gets bullied because he wants to wear a dress. And he puts down the book, she puts down the book at the end, and she says, this was me as a child. This was me. I always wanted to wear dresses, and I never got to. And then Shirley stands up in that big, beautiful purple gown and says, look at me now. And the whole audience just goes crazy. It's just so wonderful. Yeah. All right. So setting up drag queen story time. Our last story that we're going to talk about. I just did it again. Our last one we're going to talk about is race and story time, which is something that I have been
passionate about.
We are both so passionate about it, because the more that you talk about it, the more, oh man, it's so fun.
Need for it in our present climate.
Holy cow!
So, and I can speak. So Amy and I offered this as the last thing for the Rainbow Storytime series. As an outreach librarian, I also partnered with the City of Greeley, University of Northern Colorado, Ames Community College, all in Greeley, Colorado, and we did a Let's Talk About Race. We did 3 for the Martin Luther King parade and celebration that we had in January. And so the way I approached this was I started with my privileges, which are very different from Melanie's.
Right.
I talked about being born in the United States. I talked about having an education and having a job and having a place to live and clean water to drink. I then shared pictures of my great-grandmother, who is a Ute Indian, my grandmother, my mother, and my daughter. And we talked about my family. Then we read a great book, not quite Snow White. And for the actual March, we read These Hands, which is, these books are a little juicy. And some of these books are a little long for, like, let's say toddlers. So you do the trick of, like, you paper clip the papers together, right? And so you're getting through, you're reading to your audience, but you're doing that dialogic reading. For These Hands, how do you think this man felt that his hands couldn't make the bread at the Wonder Bread factory, but his hands could throw a baseball and his hands could play the piano? So we start talking about very gently, age appropriate, we start talking about racial injustice. racial bias, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's all age appropriate. And you know, you're in that safe space, so everybody gets a chance to share.
Yeah.
Oh, and then one thing I do want to say too, when you're doing your crafts, go and get these multicultural crayons. They're so great.
I'm sure you guys should all have them, right? You know what they all are.
And you know, and the last thing that High Plains did is we did how will we interrupt race? So we gave our patrons at the parade a chance to say, hey, this is how I plan on, I, Carolyn Valencia, pledge to interrupt racism by, and then you write it, identifying my own biases, standing up to unkindness. And then we're going to mail this to the people, and in 6 months from now, they're going to get that gentle reminder, oh, that's right, I am choosing to make this world a better place. So,
and how we've talked about it is we've been doing a lot of race consciousness there I did it again. In presentation mode, Carolyn, why do I always do this?
I like it when you go down
right
there. Mercury retrograde, that's where we're at with
So talking about race and story time. So this was one thing that we did, and is actually doing it in every single story time and talking about race and story time. So tons and tons of research out there. I'm currently reading R is for Racism, How Children Learn Race, which so much unbelievable information about how kids learn race and their egotism, how they're egocentric at the age under 3. So it's really, really important that they will see race, but if we don't talk about it, if we don't point it out, they will come to their own conclusion. This is scientific. This is what they do. And that it is known that children see race as young as 6 months. And it's cited in these books and the information and everything. This raising, write this down if you're interested in this at all, is raceconscious.org. So this Raising Race Conscious Children gives you all the information you need to know about having these conversations. And it also talks about white privilege, and it also talks about where we are as a society and where we need to be, but how it's got to be us that fights the fight. So go ahead.
So what I love about what Boulder Public Library is doing is this is not a specific event that they're highlighting, but they are adding it into all of their story times.
Well, not all of us. Some people are really there. It's hard for the storytellers. And so what basically I will do, and but you get better at it. It's just like the early literacy skills and saying, oh, by counting, you're writing. And that's one of the 5 early literacy practices. I get them mixed up. But anyway, you get good at it. So what we do with this is I will say, if I'm going to read flying, I say, look at this little boy's skin. This boy's skin is dark. What color is my skin? My skin is white. And this little boy's skin is dark. And then you say, what color is your skin? And then I'll look at the audience and I'll say, it is known that if we don't point out race to kids, they will come to their own conclusions. And then I'll say, isn't he beautiful? He's beautiful, just like you and just like me. And they talk about Brown Bear being, this is a book how many times we've read bajillions of times. And at the end, there's that beautiful spot with all those different colored children, just to say, look at all these different colors here.
And there's a lot of like nonfictions too.
Oh,
like
fabulous
nonfiction. So you can gear your story time to have a more STEM approach. Like, so you're talking about melanin. Why is my skin darker than Melanie's? Because I have busier melanin.
Right.
And then we get to talk about similarities and differences. And we all wear, or do you know how many people have tennis shoes on? How many people have hair? Oh, that you've got brown hair. Oh, but you have blonde hair.
Yeah.
But we both have special, unique hair.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so fun to do in story time and so fun to hear them react. But again, this website is great to see. So anything else you want to say about this?
And you could go to the website, Courageous Conversations. That's another really good website. There, just type in race and story times, and you're going to get a bunch of great online resources.
Yeah, in fact, here's the Raising Race Conscious website. And you can see that over on the side, it has blogs and it talks to all sorts of fabulous, fabulous things. So just different conversations to have. These are all great. And you can actually attend sessions. So this is a great, and then thank you for courageous conversations. I also just want to do a plug for the Teaching for Change. So this is a building social justice starting in the classroom. And right now they have a whole section on books and finding those books that talk about.
So All the Colors We Are. So that's a great book.
Yeah. Yeah. All of these books are, I mean, Last Stop on Market Street, who doesn't love that? That's great too. So, and there are so many resources out there. Be careful, of course, when you're looking for them. I mean, we're librarians. We know what we're doing as far as, well, we should know what we're doing is vetting information. But again, so those are all of the story times that we talk about specifically today.
Yeah, good job.
I know. So here I did put the Teaching for Change website up that I was just showing you. So, so now we are open to take questions if you want. I had to put a plug. So the Storytime and Beyond book is the book that I wrote. This one's specific to incorporating musical instruments in your story time, but I also have scripts. I talk about filming story time. I talk about filming story time, and I do talk about the sensory story times and how we do that. So it's really fun. But I tell you, the inclusion is so much more fun. I wish I could write a book just on that, although I'm still just learning. So we will take questions if anybody has any.
We do have some questions.
Okay.
So first, Melanie asked, I work with a school district and would like to find out more about sensory-friendly story times. Where do you suggest that I start?
Contact your local, so if you have a local occupational therapist or anybody that works in the field, so what you could do too is contact, if you have any schools that work specifically with disabled kids, you can find them and they should be able to contact you with an OT. Or you also want to find a parent. Parents are great allies when you're starting up a new thing like this. So you need to go out there and see where those parents are going to get support. So we actually had a parent that wanted us to do it. She hooked us up with an occupational therapist. We had an occupational therapist come into the library and go step by step to where the best story space would be, how to set up the story times. I can give you that information. It's also in the book, Storytime and Beyond. I talk about how I set that up. So really finding the support of finding support, how to do it in your community.
Or creating community partnerships. So all of the sensory story times in High Plains, there is somebody, maybe a retired special ed teacher that comes in and actually helps that the librarian and the paraprofessional do this story time. So that's
we always had a sensory table at the end of ours, and we made sure to have that therapist there, because there's a lot of, especially with the sensory story time, sometimes this is the first time parents are bringing their child out in the world and they're a little nervous. So to have somebody there to be able to talk to them is really, really important. So, and I always would say, this isn't my field. I'm an early literature. I specialize in early literature, not developmental disabilities. So you need to have somebody there to champion you, to help you make it the best story time you can.
And good luck. We hope that happens. That's good stuff.
Right. Email me if you want more questions. We could link you with somebody.
So Teresa asks, when you were talking about policies, what policies need to be in place in order to do these types of story times?
Ooh, just laying it on the line.
So, and so basically you want policies that say that say your library is devoted to creating programs and services that are all encompassing, right? That the verbiage has to be very specific so that when these programs are challenged, you can say, but that's a part of our policy to provide a space for all of our community members.
Right, and this is library school. This is why we go to get our MLS and the advocacy behind why we do what we do. This is ALA. So if you want more information on policies, go to the ALA website, but your admin should be on board with following that ALA Bill of Rights and knowing what to do.
Or you can Google what libraries are doing, like, let's say, a lot of LGBT plus programming. I know that Ames Community Library or Ames Public Library in Ohio does it. And so you could go to their website and take a peek at their policy. And if you don't have those policies in place, then you advocate to change them and to rewrite them.
Right.
Because oftentimes, somebody just recently said to me, oftentimes the obstacle is the way.
Right.
So we use verbiage that is, I don't know, that just really kind of allows us to expand on what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Right. But remember, we're first and foremost, we're librarians. I mean, like, I'm specific to children's work. I'm going to go get help to get stuff like that going for me. So, and again, if you want to contact me, I've put library directors in contact with my library director, David Farnan, who's very, very on board with inclusion and diversity. It's very, very important to him. And he speaks to it very well too. So sometimes speaking to another administration person helps them be able to understand what policies need to be put into place.
So a little vague, but again, we're using what we have. We're using the tools that we have in little baby steps for some of us.
Yeah, the fact you guys are here.
For Boulder, they just hit the ground running, and I applaud them for that. For High Plains, we are taking little tiny steps as we get closer and closer to really understanding our community, our staff.
But Ben, I mean, we're we really are superheroes in advocating for this. This is what we should be doing as librarians. So, any other questions?
Yes, we have 3 other questions.
Okay.
How would you suggest incorporating some of these ideas that you talked about into just a regularly scheduled story time program?
Create a planner with that intentionally focuses on that. So that way your staff, you are in that word intentional is magical. It is powerful. And that way, every single time they sit down, office hours, and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do, for that 30 minutes, they are adding in, mindful moments that talk about differences.
Right. I have a spreadsheet. So I actually have a spreadsheet, and it'll say race, it'll say developmental disabilities, it'll say gender, it'll say, different things. And I try to make sure that in every one of my story times, I do at least 2 that are different. And not only that, so I'll pick that book. So I think the last one I did was Parker Looks Up, which is amazing. That book is so cute, about the little girl that sees, she goes to the museum and sees Michelle Obama, and she's like, there I am. And that one worked perfect for race. And I'll put a sticky note on it, and I'll say, talk about race at the ending page where she's talking about the color of her skin. So then I note to do it. And then sometimes I'll put notes on that sticky note. So I have that book right there, and I can go to it. So intentional is the perfect thing. And to just even have staff meetings where you say, hey, this one worked real well talking with race. This one worked real well with gender identity. This one worked real well. Yeah.
And then maybe on that planner, you have points of like entry points. What open-ended conversation, or what open-ended question will you ask your group?
That's a great idea.
And then really carrying through and doing it, because we all know when we're in a story time and everybody's having fun, sometimes those great ideas, those ideas of being intentional and creating opportunities to showcase diversity, they go right out the window.
I think that's
we're having so much fun playing with our rhythm sticks or whatever.
Right.
Okay, So in the to save some time, I have a question. I'm going to put two together. So how do you survey your community to find out what they want for story times, and how do you promote these types of events in a conservative area?
That's a really good question. So the way we did this was two different ways. You do a survey like through SurveyMonkey. So if you have like people that are online and savvy like that, and let me see if I can pull up real quick on my computer what the questions that Amy asked her PFLAG community. And the other thing about marketing, which I took away from PLA. So this is not my gem. This is from one of the great presenters, and PLA was outstanding this year.
Yeah, I hope you guys went. It was fun.
They said either do this, advertise for 2 to 3 months, because you know it's really hard for people to be mad for 2 to 3 months, right? I mean, so maybe the heat will die down and they won't be so upset, or advertise for 3 weeks. So Broomfield Library just had a drag queen story hour, and they maybe advertised for 2-3 weeks. They had over 150 people show up, and
yeah, and we are always way on board with being completely transparent and advertising a lot. I forgot the second part of the question, Lauren.
Right here.
What is it?
They were asking about marketing and how do you survey your community. So you find a partnership to work with, right? You know, because if you do this kind of survey in the library with, like, let's say teens, they're not going to run over to the lobby desk and fill out that survey. So you have a crafting program with them, because teens, kids love to make things, right? And so as you guys are crafting and you're sitting down, your teen librarian is sitting down with them and they're bonding with them, you start asking these questions like an interview, or like Amy asked in this survey, if the High Plains Library District were to offer a Rainbow Story Hour, followed by a stay and play activity time focused on diversity and inclusion themes for children's ages preschool through 2nd grade, would you be interested in attending? What days would you want to come? You know, something that simple.
Yeah, we always do things like this too, and we hand them out at our story times or do SurveyMonkey.
And we're like, are we out of time?
Yeah, we could go on and on about marketing. Really email Carolyn, and she could send you the survey that she
or connect you with Amy Ortiz, who really is she is just a source of she has so many resources, and her heart is so big, and she's always wanting to connect with folks and really advocate for diversity and inclusion.
Do we have time for one more question?
We do not at this point.
Email us, please.
Thank you for having us.
Please email us, because we love this so much, and I would love to have been able to talk to you guys more, like during the presentation too.
Well, thank you so much, Melanie and Carolyn. This was awesome. I think we've all walked away with a lot that we can think about, and hopefully take away some things that you can go ahead and start putting into practice at your library. So if you have any other questions, feel free to go ahead and email both Melanie and Carolyn with your direct questions, or if you have questions for us as the host of the conference, feel free to email us as well. Once you leave today's webinar, you're going to get a link to a survey about this presentation, and we would really appreciate your feedback. It helps us to improve. And again, on the last page of that survey will be a certificate displaying CEU credits if you need them. So thank you again to Melanie and Carolyn so much, and thanks to all who participated today.